It's Pride Month, and we're on the backside. Pride Parade in New York City is taking place, and John Allen, my very special guest here, and a friend of 30 years, going back to Guilford days, walking on the beach. Hi, neighbor. That felt good. And we're getting a little tone, mood of elegy and legacy, and what is it all about to leave to the next generation? What does that mean? So welcome, John.
Thanks for having me, Frank.
John Allen, who has so many projects going at once, and we'll get to them. But first, I want to say thank you for the flag, and for the table runner, and for making time to come today. You know, here we are, June 28th, the end of the month. So happy Pride.
Yes, happy Pride.
And happy immigrant poetry. I guess we're all immigrants. I'm wearing the button from Saturday's great celebration on the New Haven Green for International Refugee Day. And there are about 200 people there.
Wonderful.
So I'm going to volunteer and try, as Dave Knapp did, walk the walk as well as talk the talk, and volunteer some time there. And it produces good guests. So, what's on your mind in terms of lines that you brought with you today that you'd like to maybe open the show with? Walt Whitman or Ella Wilcox? Can you read a few lines?
Sure.
I'd love to hear them.
Well, I think, June is Gay Pride Month, LGBTQ Pride Month. I'm still old school. I still refer to it as gay. And we are a very, we're bound, the community is bound by so many disparate individual communities.
Our diversity is astounding if you think about it.
But we're bound together because of the sexual and gender identity diversity. And so, but it is, June is Pride, simply called Pride Month. And it really happened because a lot of people don't know this, but it occurred because of the patron saint, Judy Garland, who has always been an iconic figure for the queer movement because she was such a tragic figure, and from the Wizard of Oz has been her signature role as Dorothy, friend of Dorothy. Are you a friend of Dorothy? Back when it was illegal to be openly gay, people were arrested and traumatized because of that. So we had our own language in order to try and find other queer people, and it was typically, "Are you a friend of Dorothy?" So
and Over the Rainbow.
Right, and her song Over the Rainbow. And so when she died in June 23rd, 1969, in Europe, her body was brought back to New York, and it was on a Friday that her funeral occurred. And so it was during that time that the streets were lined with people, mourners for her, and just a huge star. And so back at the bar in the evening down in Greenwich Village on Christopher Street at the Stonewall Cafe, there was a routine police raid. And so people had just had enough, and they rebelled against the police, and they kicked off a riot that turned into a 3-day rebellion. And so every Sunday in the last Sunday of June, there is the Gay Pride celebration, the LGBT Pride celebration in New York and major cities around the world to commemorate the rise of the modern LGBT movement. In Connecticut, we tend to have our Pride celebrations. You can really have a Pride celebration anytime. And Connecticut, because we're sandwiched in between New York and Boston, that if we had our celebration during the last Sunday, we wouldn't probably have anybody come to it. Everybody be in Boston or in New York. So instead, what we do is we have ours in September. And so there's New London Pride. It starts with New London Pride, Hartford Pride, and then the third Saturday is New Haven Pride. So those are the Pride celebrations that we have, but we do get to commemorate them. And Connecticut is really a fantastic place to live openly gay. We have so many things that we have been supportive of the sexual minority community. And I'm very proud to be here and be out, and I encourage everyone that's part of our movement to be out and to celebrate their uniqueness.
Connecticut's a gift. I agree with you 100%.
Yes. And so it was sort of at that, when we were talking about the show for today, I do think about a legacy. I'm on the backside of my life, and I do think about legacy and what will we leave to other people, and I know you do too. And so, because it's LGBT Pride Month, what better author to have than Walt Whitman, granddaddy of our writers, celebrated writers. And so, as I was looking at his famous collection of poems, Leaves of Grass, I was thinking about the poem Legacy, and it's a brief writing, and so I thought it's called My Legacy.
I'm glad you brought it. That's a real inspiration, because he, of course, had to change some of the pronouns when he was writing those poems originally, especially the Calamus poems. Believe it or not, forced to change the pronouns in order to get published.
Even then, prior to the time that the word homosexual was even invented.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the latter part of the 1800s that the concept of homosexuality even became a word.
And studied.
Yes. And so, but he certainly, as I was doing a little research about him, he certainly enjoyed the company of men, but some of the things that I had read was that his sexuality was more fluid, and that he did have relations with women as well.
He had a long-time lover who was a trolley car conductor, and some of the pictures show them together. It's wonderful for the history. So what does this poem offer?
Well, I think it's it's what he considers his legacy.
Okay.
And I think it's simple and it's beautiful.
Good.
I'd like to read it. It's only a couple of lines.
Great.
My legacy. The businessman, the acquirer, vast. After assiduous years surveying results, preparing for departure, devises houses and lands to his children, bequeaths stocks, goods, funds for a school or hospital, leaves money to certain companions to buy tokens, souvenirs of gems and gold. But I, my life surveying, closing, with nothing to show to devise from its idle years, nor houses, nor lands, nor tokens of gems or gold for my friends, yet certain remembrances of the war for you and after you, and little souvenirs of camps and soldiers with my love I bind together and bequeath in this bundle of songs.
Wow. That's a great allusion to the Civil War, because he walked the walk. He was a nurse for the Union soldiers and lived it.
Yes. And when you think about, you look at in the Ken Burns series of the Civil War, and you realize just how vast those hospitals in the tents were, and how hot, and the smells that you would have encountered, and yet he was there as a volunteer.
Every day.
Every day.
The dying groans and moans of men, young men. What a big soul he is. And he he lived an unfettered life.
Right.
He was just out, but he was also proud, and he changed the course of poetry in America too. He's the granddaddy, right?
Yeah, he is the granddaddy. And the thing that I love so much about this is he didn't talk about riches.
Yeah.
It wasn't riches in monetary, but it was riches in what he gave to other people and how he shared himself and his life. And I just think that's, it's just so incredible, and what an inspiration. And I take inspiration from that as well.
That's beautiful, John. Thanks. So, on personal values, I mean, we can read in his lines what his personal values must have been. What inspires you? Mm-hmm. What are some of your closely held personal values that keep you motivated but also engaged the way you are, which is, in the prime of life, mm-hmm. in the fullness of activity? I mean, there's the Pride Center. Mm-hmm. What a wonderful founding that was in New Haven, the New Haven Pride Center.
Yes.
Then there's the Rainbow Support Group. Mm-hmm. And now it's your TV show, which is wonderful because, look at the visibility that this provides, almost mutually. And what else? Mm-hmm. What else is cooking on the front burner?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that I have a passion for is history, and certainly queer history. And the thing that has always been a strong motivation for me, I was really just, as a youngster and as a young adult, I was just lost until I finally understood what was going on inside of me as a gay person. And it wasn't until that moment, and it happened at 26 for me, mm-hmm. that I just had an explosion of growth, personal awareness, and wanting to make life better for mm-hmm. everyone that has ever experienced any kind of discrimination and bullying and not living up to their full potential. And so I do that not only in my work of supporting people with intellectual disabilities, that's my career, but also in devoting my time and energies and resources to helping to make queer life better in Connecticut. And thereby in Connecticut, we have we're such a small state, but we are so powerful. I am convinced that the fact that we were the second state to offer same-gender marriage, that we had an impact on other places around the world, certainly in the United States and other places around the world, that our state, the second in the country after Massachusetts to offer same-gender marriage, and it was done through the legislature and not through the court, mm-hmm. that we had an impact for making same-gender marriage, same-sex marriage, available to other places around the country and the world.
Your image of being exploded from the inside out in a crucible, that pressure that builds and builds until there is a personal explosion, leaves everyone, I think, who has felt it, really wanting solace, comfort, but also understanding. And those values you seem to be offering others, which is a really wonderful take on Walt Whitman. I mean, his expanding lines, they're not the short ones like Emily Dixon. They breathe. Mm-hmm. They need to be open and expressive. So anyone who's gone through a trauma, a personal crisis, somehow develops that empathy, mm-hmm. which you're talking about. Mm-hmm. In other words, I want to make it possible for somebody else to find it less painful.
Mm-hmm. I subscribe to a personal philosophy that everyone is gay until proven otherwise. And so I believe that as more people come out, the easier it is for everyone else to do the same.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that right now. For people of my generation at the age, I came out at 26. I was right on target with my generation. Men were 26, women 28. Young people now are coming out younger and younger, and we have young kids coming out as trans and as early as 3 and 5 years of age. And people, these gay youth centers are exploding with numbers of kids that are discovering what's going on inside of them. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes more and more important that just to make that personal declaration of that you are that you're not straight. Mm-hmm. And it can be a very broad spectrum. Our acronym is ever expanding. It used to be just lesbian and gay, and then it was bisexual and transgender, and now intersex and queer and questioning and asexual and two-spirit. It just continues on in the alphabet.
It was like 26 letters. Each one had a special meaning here. That's so interesting to look back in a kind of retrospective from earlier times. Whitman, you've got Ella Wilcox. I've got Mary Oliver. Mary Oliver lived with her partner in Provincetown, and Martha died young, so Mary continued on writing her poetry. She's got about 20 books out, and for some reason, she speaks with the eyes of the heart and has such a following. But in those days, coming to truth, personal truth, was such a struggle. Now, as you point out, middle school, gay-straight alliance? Right. What's going on? Right. The world is just exploding. That image is wonderful, John.
In Connecticut, I was part of the Stonewall Speakers Bureau that our friend David Knapp has been so active in.
He was on our last show.
Yeah. And, I was talking recently with the True Colors in Hartford, which is they run the largest queer youth conference in the country.
Is that high school?
Primarily geared to high school, but young people. Uh-huh. And they get regularly thousands of people that come to UConn and Stores for their weekend conference on all things queer. And they have said that there are, when Robin McCallan was on my show in New Haven, she had said that there are over 250 gay-straight alliances in the state now.
Wow.
So not only high schools, there's only 169 towns, but we're talking about high schools and middle schools now.
Yeah.
This is incredible.
It is.
And I realize, it's because Connecticut is so welcoming of people. We still have our problems where people are not open and accepting of others, but...
Last week, Dave Knapp was talking about being thrown out of the Methodist Church in Madison. Mm-hmm. And of course, he's now approaching 92, so he's got a long history. What else, in context of legacy, are you, in the words of Walt Whitman, leaving for future generations, besides your activities with the Rainbow Group?
Yeah.
And the Pride Center? What else are you up to?
Well, the Rainbow Support Group, just so that folks know about that, we believe we started the first of its kind in the country, and it's a support group for people who have an intellectual disability and are members of the LGBT community. And we started it in 1998, September of 1998, so we're coming up on 20 years.
Wow.
And we have helped start LGBT groups for people with intellectual disabilities around the country and around the world. We hear from people around the world. We have a book out. We have 3 films. Our films, one of our films has been screened at the Chicago International Lesbian and Gay Film Festival, was picked up and screened in Milan, Italy. And that's a 20-minute short documentary called A Special Outing. It's on YouTube. And it just talks about what it means to have an intellectual disability and to have to navigate that coming out process, oftentimes against with staff trying to give them psychotropic medications, proselytizing, write behavior plans around their behaviors and activities. They've had to do this completely on their own in many instances. Wow. And so, yeah, we still treat people with intellectual disabilities as we've infantilized them in many regards and not recognized that they might have a sexual orientation that's different than others.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
And 20 years later...
And we're still going strong.
And what a legacy that is, John.
It is. It's fun. Well, you know, it came out of the fact that we had started the New Haven Pride Center, which actually started as the New Haven Gay and Lesbian Community Center. And we changed about 10 years ago to the New Haven Pride Center to be more inclusive of all the disparate communities. But it was the first queer center in New Haven, the third in the state, and it continues to be only 2 in the state. The other is in Norwalk at the Triangle Community Center in Norwalk. The Hartford Community Center closed. Now the Hartford Gay and Lesbian Health Collective is in their building, and they've been going for many years. You know, we ran the New Haven Pride Center as sort of a clubhouse for the first 20 years.
Has it been 20?
Yeah, 21 years.
Really?
Yeah, 1996. May of 96 was when we signed the incorporation papers, and it was me. It was because it grew out of my master's thesis, the needs assessment. We had Tom Jackson, who's now gone on and become Reverend Tom Jackson from New Haven. He's now living in San Francisco with his husband. And Jane Griffith, who was an attorney. The 3 of us signed the incorporation papers. And that was in May. And then in November, with the help of Mayor John DeStefano at the time, we got our first space and we opened New Haven's first queer center in New Haven. And we've been continuing to run, and about a year ago, we hired our first executive director, a paid executive director, and he's doing fantastic work. The center's open every day. We've got programming going on almost every day. And I believe that Greater New Haven, with 1 million people in Greater New Haven, you know, our state has 3.5 million people. Greater New Haven has 1 million people in it, and certainly out in this demographic area along the shoreline, we see regularly people coming into the New Haven Center. I believe can support a robust queer center. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
It was a master's idea, a master's thesis idea. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a needs assessment to quantify the Southern Connecticut queer community.
What the need would be.
Yeah.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
And here we are.
So now that we've got all those things going on, now the thing that I am looking at is, what is the legacy? And I look around at things that are that we haven't done a good job of. And one of those things is reclaiming our history. You know, queer history has been erased from the history books. It's not taught regularly in school.
He had to change the pronouns.
Yes.
The whole history and mindset was, in a sense, whitewashing the history to be acceptable to bourgeois social standards, middle class. Really, hypocrisy, as it turns out, over the years.
It has been hypocrisy. Well, one of the things that I was doing was when we were changing some of the way that the New Haven Pride celebrations were going on, we were looking at some ways to sort of include different events and activities. And so I thought, well, you know, I had been gathering up some stories I had heard about in New Haven and sort of the region that were queer-related, LGBT stories. And I certainly, you know, as an out gay person for many years, I have many of my own. But we put this, I started gathering them up and realizing, hey, you know, there's queer history that happened in all 9 squares. You know, New Haven is, I believe, the first planned city in the country in the 1630s. And
Wow.
there is queer history that I have found that has occurred in all 9 squares in the downtown section of New Haven. And so we put this program together, and we call it New Haven's Closet. And I found some old postcards, and we've just put this together. And we do a walking tour, a 90-minute walking tour of downtown New Haven, talking about 38 queer events and celebrations and buildings and historic topics that have occurred throughout New Haven's 4 centuries. 4 centuries of queer history that we talk about.
That's a perfect time to take a break. We'll be gone for 3 minutes. Grab a beer, some peanuts. But do come back, because we got some visuals that are really going to capture you. May I hold that for a minute?
Uh-huh.
This I want to know more about in terms of that tour you took me on with other gay men into the FBI headquarters.
Right.
That was really something.
That was an incredible event.
It was. So we're on break for a quick 3 minutes, and we'll be back.
And I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to. My love, she keeps me warm. 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 She keeps me warm.
We are neighbors and best friends.
I love my sister.
My heart doesn't see race. Love is love.
Our family is no less than any other family.
Love is kind. Love is patient.
You're doing great. We're gonna try this again, okay?
Okay.
Wheels, pedals, handlebar, brakes. Sit up straight, keep your weight in the center, keep your eyes on the road, hands on the grips, button the seat. If we feel ourselves falling, what do?
Just keep pedaling.
Good girl. Now remember, it's all about balance and steering. Steer with your hands, steer with your body. Steer into the corners and you stay out of trouble. And the bell's your buddy, so go ahead and ding that. All right, you ready? Here we go. Pedal, honey, pedal. There you go, you're a bike rider.
Most parenting is hard to do in just 2 minutes. But 2 minutes twice a day making sure they brush is easier, and it could help save them from a lifetime of tooth pain.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
Everybody has a dream. Mine was to see the ocean. And with a little help, I made it.
Mary Oliver, she's in her 80s now, and after her partner died in Provincetown, she had a succession of deeply loved and nurtured dogs, and I think the nurturing was mutual. She wrote many poems about that. But I'm going to pick one at random out of Devotions, which is a marvelous new release, a collection and excerpts from all her work throughout her whole life. This one, Lingering in Happiness. She is a nature poet in the Walt Whitman, Robert Frost tradition, has a reverence in her DNA for the beauty in the middle of what she lives, and of course extrapolates into a benevolent God who's looking down every day over everyone. Lingering in happiness. After rain, after many days without rain, it stays cool, private and cleansed under the trees. And the dampness there, married now to gravity, falls branch to branch, leaf to leaf, down to the ground where it will disappear, but not, of course, vanish, except to our eyes. The roots of the oaks will have their share, and the white threads of the grasses, and the cushion of moss. A few drops, round as pearls, will enter the mole's tunnel, and soon so many small stones, buried for 1,000 years, will feel themselves being touched. She can even make stones sentient. There's such reverence in her devotions. But at 85, her legacy seems to be that self-wisdom, that self-knowledge that comes through pain and suffering and experience. Give us a few nuggets of your own hard-won self-knowledge and self-wisdom that has come in the middle as you are, in full flower of your public life and community giving. What are some of your self-reflections in the middle of it all?
Well, I know I'm a better person because I'm partnered and that I have a husband.
Yeah.
And we've been together literally since the first time I ever went into a gay bar. That was in 1982. And
right there, he was there.
He was there. And we've been together ever since, and I really feel that he is my soulmate. And our lives are, everything we do is together, including when there's a photo of us together on a riding up and down the Connecticut River for a brunch and a celebration of a 90th birthday.
Oh, let's put that one up. That's the Dave Knapp 90th birthday party. Oh, what a wonderful trip that was. Good old Dave Knapp. He's a guest from last time.
And that was the first time I ever saw a bald eagle flying up above the boat. It was really incredible.
In fact, there were many of us bald eagles on the boat that day. I had shaved my head completely, just for the fun of it, in lieu of dyeing it red. So, partnered, husband, domestic bliss.
Right.
Nacho and dogs and cats and...
Nacho is my dog.
Yes.
He's a Chihuahua.
Chihuahua. And now that you're every day out doing something, right? What is it that at the end of the day you feel when you come back and reflect about?
Yeah. Well, I just try to be as authentic to myself as possible. And be open to helping other people. And, one of the things that strikes me is that even in Connecticut, where we're so welcoming of diversity, there's still so much work to be done.
That's the point you were alluding to just before we took a break.
I mean, it's just, it's heartbreaking to realize that we still get phone calls at the Pride Center. I mean, every day we get phone calls from people that are that are 50 years old, discovering they're gay, might have family, they can't be out to their family, fearful of what that's going to do to change their life, or that they discover that they're trans and looking desperate to connect with other people. And so we realize that it's still not safe for everyone to be open. They haven't had the kind of support structure that many of us need, whether it's in our families of origin or something within, that gives you the personal strength to be open about who you are and what's going on inside.
Let's just reflect back about that difference between high school and now grammar school children feeling free to be completely themselves in a diverse culture. And today, people in their 50s who are finally coming out, I mean, what kind of a pressure cooker must that have been?
Oh, I can't imagine.
For 50 years. Dave Knapp last week said he came out in his 50s.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And of course, that might have been generational too, which is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I definitely think generational, but it's still going on.
Yeah,
it is
right.
still occurring.
And there's a hotline, I'm sure, somewhere out there, which is a good service. But if the center is open all day, every day,
right.
There's someone at the end of the line. That's
right.
wonderful.
Or even 211, and they usually wind up referring people to our center.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's just as striking is that there's still young people that are fearful of coming out because they could be kicked out of their home. I'll never forget that a couple of years ago, we at the youth group, that there was a 16-year-old boy who had shown up at the center and said, "Oh, I have to leave because I have to walk down the street to have my father pick me up. I can't let him know where I've been." I mean, this is happening in New Haven.
And now. What about that youth group? Is there a self-identified young people's group that now can be together to support each other?
Yes, and I mean, as we said, Robin's group with True Colors runs the largest queer youth conference in the country, where they get thousands of people coming to descending on Yukon stores.
Annually. In March.
They just had their 25th anniversary.
Wow. 25 years.
25 years. And that's happening in Connecticut.
Oh. So let's look at a kind of scattershot, retrospective, a little bit of this, that on the visuals that you sent in. Where's that?
Well, this is at the Yale University Art Gallery, which is part of my New Haven's Closet tour, where there are many, many artists, famous artists, who have their works displayed at within the Yale University Art Gallery. And this, of course, is a Warhol painting. And but it's free to go in and explore. And they have Warhol and Bernice Abbott and Thomas Eakin, who are all part of our community.
Oh, I remember Thomas Eakins. Yes, all those swimmers. So I'm having a senior moment.
Well, the thing that's so interesting about the Yale University Art Gallery is that there's right across. The new gallery was designed by Louis Kahn, who also did the British Art Center, and they too have many works that are members of the queer community, and they. Right across the street, and it was the University Art Gallery edition was one of Louis Kahn's first commissions, and the British Art Center is one of his last.
That's so cool, isn't it?
It is cool. Both are world-class museums directly across the street.
Speaking of legacy and also a rap, isn't that wonderful? One of the first and the last. So what happens on the FBI tour? Do you do it again?
Well, we part of the tour that we do is there's about 38 sites that I've been able to find, celebrations and sites, and one of them is we go to the FBI building, which is a nondescript 4-story building that many people don't really even know.
Right.
But of course, we how ironic that it is built on the site of the former New Haven Arena, which was built in 1924 and was demolished in 1974. It's where the New Haven Nighthawks used to play, but many, many famous people came through there. The Rolling Stones, Elton John, and of course Jim Morrison of The Doors, which so many people know about here. He was an iconic rock star of his time, and he came to New Haven, was kissing a girl backstage, and he got maced by the New Haven police officer, who did not realize who he was.
What year was that?
1967, December 9, 1967. And he was on stage criticizing the New Haven police at the New Haven Arena. They turned up the lights and said, okay, show's over. And he got arrested and was bloodied and arrested. And then wrote this famous song, the #1 hit song, Peace Frog. Blood in the streets in the town of New Haven. Blood stains the palm trees of Venice. And it occurred on the corner of Grove, Orange, and State Streets. And that's now called Arena Square. And they put the FBI building there, which of course we know Hoover was a cross-dresser. And how ironic. And we also know that Jim Morrison was bisexual. So many people think of him as a ladies' man, but he was bisexual. We claim him. And so it happened right there.
Wow.
And very exciting.
I love the tour.
Yeah, the tour was amazing. And we educated them.
Yeah.
Some of the FBI agents.
And there's a plaque on the wall.
Right.
In the FBI building.
Right.
Commemorating the, wow.
That was an exciting time. But we also talk about some of the other things that were going on. New Haven Stonewall event, what I call our Stonewall event, happened in December 1993 when we were trying to put forth domestic partnership legislation in the city of New Haven, and it lost by 1 vote. The 1 vote was the abstention of Rosa DeLaura's mother, and she refused to vote for this non-monetary symbolic registry of queer relationships. And a couple of years later, Rosa DeLaura, who has been so good on many of our issues, actually voted for the homophobic DOMA legislation.
Wow.
Yes, and she called us in and explained why she was voting for the DOMA, which was anti-gay, which said that one state wouldn't have to recognize another's marriage, the reciprocity that we all enjoy. And yet it was the hypocrisy was mind-numbing, because here she's married to a divorced Jew. So she believes in traditional marriage. Well, that's not a traditional marriage. But of course, we can forgive. We'd never forget.
And we have a couple of Pride visuals. What's that?
That's actually one of the New Haven Pride celebrations on Center Street that we have now in its 20th year. 20 years of New Haven Pride. And what's Pride without some drag queens? So.
Okay. And next?
That's in our center. That was actually, that was the GLSEN, the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Teachers Network.
Oh yeah,
being
GLSEN.
filmed for Channel 8 News. And that was a wonderful day and very celebratory.
You were in that?
I wasn't interviewed, but I was there.
Were you in the group, GLSEN?
GLSEN Connecticut now meets at our center. They're using our center as our as their headquarters.
Good to know.
It's a wonderful relationship.
And then there's
There's you and my husband and you and me.
Yeah.
What a glorious day that was. The 90th celebration on the Connecticut River, up on the top deck of the Lady Catherine, enjoying lunch and our gorgeous, gorgeous state, and seeing the first, my very first bald eagle flying overhead. And what an incredible day that was. I look at that photo often.
And Dave Knapp at 90 was so generous to invite so many friends. He and I go back 30 years the way you and I go back 30 years.
Right.
I love that shot.
That's great. And New Haven, I just have to, John DeStefano, Mayor DeStefano, was so supportive of us. And part of the reason I give him his props, that he really was very helpful. This was during mid-90s when New Haven was still a ghost town. People were fearful of going into downtown New Haven. They thought of it as a dangerous city. And now, of course, you try and go into downtown New Haven on any night and you can't get a parking space because it's just so popular, and with the restaurant scene and whatever. But one of the things was that they wanted to bring as many people into downtown. And gay people have always been pioneers when it comes to Renaissance cities and Renaissance.
Gentrification.
Yeah. So.
And what's
And this
that?
was the start of. This was Betty, one of our longstanding members, who was helping with the lead car of the Pride Parade down in downtown New Haven on the Green.
Great visuals.
And the Dorothy Awards is the largest LGBT award ceremony in the state. It's called Dorothy Awards, obviously, after our patron saint, Judy Garland. We just celebrated our 15th anniversary. We have been privileged to have the Senator Richard Blumenthal come to and give an update at this event. We usually get between 200 and 300 people at this event. We hold it in North Haven at Fantasia. And
you're so loyal. You're there every year. And Richard Blumenthal, our dear senator, is at everything.
He is amazing.
He's everywhere.
I just am so proud that he's our senator.
By the way, we got to point out that that's you on the right,
right,
because that is with your very special handlebar mustache,
which just got lost a couple of days ago.
Did it really? For this show?
Yeah,
no.
Just for the summer.
For the summer,
right.
yeah.
And my husband. And this is these are two very well-known drag queens in New Haven. On the left is Kiki Lucia, who was actually headlining the Fairfield County Pride celebration as the host. And then in the middle is Robin Banks, who's euphemistic, funny double entendre.
Double entendre.
Right.
She's been Robin Banks her whole life.
And she is very funny and very generous, and hosts many events and gives away most of the money to charities. It's including the Pride Center. And so we were talking about drag in New Haven. That was on our show called Out in New Haven. And this is the Pride celebration in downtown New Haven. This is Daniel Eugene, who was singing, actually. He's a queer artist, and he just had a photographic show in our gallery spaces at the center.
Oh, yeah.
And he's got a program called New Haven Drag, NHV Drag.
He's a great photographer, too.
He's an amazing artist.
Yeah.
Yes.
His studio is in Westville.
Yes.
And
and this is Tony Ferriola, who is all things to so many people. He is a star of a documentary called A Self-Made Man, who talks about his transition, and is a wonderful resource, speaks around the world, and we are absolutely, truly fortunate to have him right here in New Haven area.
Okay, John, we've got 5 minutes. Let's do that wrap up that you wanted to do. Anything that crossed your mind and you remembered that you wanted to say that we didn't cover, or Any nuggets of wisdom now in terms of legacy that is on tape and is a legacy in itself?
Well, one of the things that I did bring is as I walk my dog Nacho, my 8-pound Chihuahua, around the Short Beach area of Brantford where I live.
Yeah.
I'm reminded every day, because at the end of my street is the Ella Wheeler Wilcox homestead that has since been turned into condominiums. But she was a world-renowned poet in the late 1800s into when she died in 1918. And she was a rock star of her time, and very generous. And her legacy is the poems, and of course the one Solitude that she wrote that so many people have heard. And I think about it every day I go by the house.
Well, sure.
And it's just 2 lines. Laugh and the world laughs with you. Weep and you weep alone, for the sad old earth must borrow its mirth, but has trouble enough on its own. And it continues. But I just think it's such a wonderful statement and a wonderful legacy that she has given to not only the people of Brantford, but in her poems that she has been so gracious and wanting to, that is her legacy, is her writing.
Yeah, and obviously she sees with the eyes of the heart. Wow. So, picture 20 years from now. We've talked about 20 years ago, and all these things were happening. Do you have any fears, concerns for the near future?
I am very frightened about what is occurring not only in Washington about for queer people, but for anyone that is not wealthy or has any kind of difference in their life.
Other, yeah.
Yeah, the people that are the others, and that's unfortunately most people in this country. And I'm just fearful about what we're doing. And it becomes all the more important for people to be true to themselves, to be open, to stand up and be counted.
To resist if need be, clearly. But specifically for the LGBT community, I'm wondering if you're fearful for the next couple of years in a way that we haven't thought about. In other words, we made such magnificent gains in the last 10 years, but if you add that, the last 30 years, it's a huge leap forward. Are we about to face one step backward?
Yeah, I think many steps backward. That's what I'm fearful about. I think Stonewall was in 1969 was such a demarcation line. 1997 with Ellen's coming out on Time magazine and in her show was another. And we have seen tremendous progress since Ellen's coming out. And I'm fearful that with what is occurring in Washington, that we will see, if not, that same-gender marriage could be eliminated or at least weakened. And I don't want to see those kinds of progress that we've made where people are able to live openly and self-actualize, that they're going to have to instead go back in the closet and have so much wasted potential.
Which means for the next year, which will be New Haven City Pride 50th anniversary, that we had better start now with our activism, our resistance, and just putting ourselves out there as who we are.
The most powerful thing that any one person can do is to be out.
And truly himself or herself. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. Such a pleasure.
What a good review. Yeah, where we've been and also some of the highlights. I'm so grateful you do what you do.
Thank you.
And thank you for encouraging us individually to start to walk the walk.
Great.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing the poems. So, dear old Walt Whitman, we're here for you. It's a wrap, and look forward to July's show, which will be kids' poems. Again, thanks for the flag. How I wish I had one. Thank you, Ken. And thanks, Max and Christine, and of course, Chris. All right.